Here's the thing. God says we're going to discontinue from our heritage. But he tells you how that's going to happen. And that discontinuation of the heritage consists of food, language, garments, your type of dress, your land. All of these things encompass a heritage. God says the children of Israel was going to lose all of that collectively. And at the end of the verse, it's going to tell you how. Read it from the top again.
And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thine heritage.
Which means you're going to discontinue from your land, from your language, from your culture. You're going to discontinue from that.
Right.
Continue to read.
That I gave thee.
Because God gave us a land, a culture, a heritage.
Right.
He gave us a language. All of these things God gave us. But he says, guess what? You're going to discontinue from that. Go ahead.
And I will cause thee to serve thine enemies.
So now, the discontinuing of our heritage happened when we had to serve our enemies. What proof is that? When you served your enemies, you're no longer called Israel. We're now called Johnson, Jackson, Fredericks, Kennedy, Campbell. Every one of those names helmed from who? That our people have. Where do our last names come from? Right now in America. Say again? From the slave masters. So, read the bottom part of that verse again.
And I will cause thee to serve thine enemies.
So wait a minute. The discontinuation, we just used one example with just our names. How did that happen? We had to serve our enemies. And what did we gain in serving our enemies? We got their last name, we got their religion, we got their frame of thought, their way of dress, everything contrary to what God gave us as that heritage.
Right.
We understand that. But you don't understand. It's layers. Help. That's why we're out here. Let's peel back the onion layers. Let's peel it back. So let's go. So while you ponder on it, right? Deuteronomy chapter 28. Let's go a little deeper. Let's see how that serving our enemies and the layers that are beneath it, how does it affect us today? Let's see. Because I got a question for you. Thank you. Very smart sisters, I can tell, right? Are these accounts historical facts?
You asked me, are they historical facts?
Yeah. So this is imagery of slave transport, right? Images of slave auction blocks. What was that movie Will Smith was just in? Emancipation. That recent movie that Will Smith just did. He played this gentleman here. This is a very famous picture, right? Very, very famous. I'm sure you sisters have seen it before. So guess what? Is this a fact? We know that because this man really lived. So these accounts, our forefathers in the cotton fields, is that a fact? Brother, that's a fact. Our forefathers were in the cotton fields. Right down the street in Mississippi, that's considered the cotton capital. That's considered the cotton capital. You drive through any of these rural parts of the South on any major highway, you look to the right, you look to the left, you see cotton fields as far as the eye can see. So these things here are biblical, are actual accounts. What many of us don't realize is these historical accounts are actually biblical. And we're going to let God be true and every man a liar. Let's see. Deuteronomy 28 verse 15. Let's start there.
Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 15.
Keep holding that up.
But it shall come to pass.
It shall come to pass. There's going to be a future event. Shall is future tense. It shall come to pass. Let's see what God says.
If thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe, to do all his commandments.
So God is talking to Moses. Moses talking to our foreparents in the wilderness. This is after the Exodus out of Egypt. You ever heard that about the Exodus with Moses? You ever heard that?
So
You heard of it? Okay. Yes, right? But what we don't know is that involved so-called black people. That had nothing to do with Caucasians. When you look at the region that all of that took, dude, most people don't know, majority of the Bible took place in Africa. Majority of everything written in here took place on the blackest continent in the world. But for some reason, everyone believes that white people were inserted, and everybody believes that all those involved in this were Caucasian. This is the blackest book on the face of the earth. I got you in 1 second, sis. Let's read.
But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God.
So God says, through Moses, if you, the children of Israel, don't listen to the voice of the Lord thy God, which are the commandments he gave. Go ahead.
To observe, to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
So, just like a parent tells a child, if you don't listen and do everything that I instructed you to do, there's going to be a punishment. Here, he calls those punishments curses. So I just want to get through a couple curses, then I got your question, sis, all right? Let's go to verse 68. So if we don't...
I can't hear with the yelling. So
Okay,
like,
yeah,
can you just bring it down
absolutely.
a smidget so I can
Absolutely, sis, no problem at all. So, we'll read from the top again? Is that what you're asking? We'll read from the top again?
Like, he can continue
Okay.
just without the...
All right, no problem,
It
sis.
blocks my hearing.
No problem. So now, just to sum it up, God says, because the flip side was, if we did everything, we would be above all people.
Right.
That was the flip side. The other side of that coin, if you don't listen and do all of his commandments, curses or punishments would come on his children, who are the children of Israel. Okay, let's see what some of those curses are. Because remember, we would discontinue from our heritage because we had to serve our enemies. Let's see, verse 68.
Deuteronomy chapter 15 and verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships.
So, Egypt, synonymous with bondage in Exodus chapter 20. So, one of the curses that would happen to the children of Israel is they would go into bondage by way of ships. Read it again from the top.
And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships.
So here's one curse. The Lord says, we will bring you into bondage again for not hearkening and doing all of his commandments by way of ships. Historically, think of any nation of people who went into bondage on ships. Our forefathers, our foremothers. Let's keep reading them.
By the way whereof I spake unto thee.
So Moses says, by the way I'm explaining this is exactly how the Lord told me to tell you. And it's going to happen this way. Go ahead.
Thou shalt see it no more again.
So the way we went into Egypt the first time, by walking in, he says, you're not going to go back into Egypt that way again. Collectively. Go ahead.
And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies.
Wait. So the first portion, slavery on ships, and once you get off those ships, you're going to be sold to who?
Your enemies.
So any part of the transatlantic slave trade, both from the 1400s to the 1600s, involved our people being sold on slave auction blocks. Right here in 5 Points, downtown Atlanta, was a major slave auction block. That's why it's called 5 Points. It was 5 major banks that funded the slave trade that came up from Savannah, from Charleston, South Carolina, came into Atlanta, and 5 major banks instituted, which is called 5 Points Slave Auctions. That was right here. So is this all a fact? Yes, but what we don't know is God said it was going to happen thousands of years ago. So we're unable to correlate the fact that the history with the prophecy. God says if you don't listen, God says we're the most rebellious people. We'll hear what God commands us to do, but we'll still do our own thing. Just like we have children today. If you have disobedient children, punishments are put in place. And most times the child hates the punishment that they're receiving from the parent. Why? Because I am a father. We are fathers. But keep reading.
For bondmen,
So how were we sold?
for bondmen and bondwomen.
So wait, so we were sold for bondmen and bondwomen. That is a prophecy. Did this really happen? Come on.
And no man shall buy you.
Buy you is redeem you. As many of our forefathers did an excellent job trying to redeem us from these conditions. Even up until today, they were not able to do so. But verse 48 real quick, then I'm going to get to sister's question.
Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 48. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies.
So when you get off those ships, you're sold as slave men and slave women. No one is able to redeem you. You're going to continue to serve those that had you on slave ships. But keep reading.
Which the Lord shall send against thee.
So you tell me slavery wasn't because of economics?
The Lord shall send against thee.
Not just because they hated us?
The Lord shall send against thee.
We are being punished by our Father for our disobedience.
Right.
This is an act of God because physically there's no way a ship of over 300 of our foreparents could be held in straitly, transported, mistreated by 15 to 20 white crew members. It's physically impossible. But how is it not impossible? Because it's an act of God. But keep reading.
In hunger.
So when you're hungry, you're going to have to serve those that had you on slave ships. That's your Publix, your Kroger, your Walmarts, wherever you have to obtain food. Even if you grow your own food, they put in place you cannot have any seeds that's not modified or created by them. No matter what you do, they said you can't get around this. Go ahead.
And in thirst.
Anytime you want a beverage of any sort, turn on your water faucet, you must get that power or that ability from those that had you on slave ships. Continue to read.
And in nakedness.
And the clothing we wear, the textiles that make our clothing, we don't get it from our own means. We have to go to those that had us on slave ships. Go ahead.
And in want of all things.
God says the curse is going to be whatever you want. You're going to have to go to those that had you on slave ships.
Bring it out.
But keep reading.
And he shall put a yoke of iron unto thy neck.
No, read it right. Read it right.
And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck.
So my sister, you pull out your phone earlier to look up the etymology. Can you do something for me real quick? Pull out your phone again. That's a smartphone, right? The phone's supposed to make us smarter.
Bring it out.
Why don't you just Google yokes of iron? I'll spell it for you. Y-O-K-E-S. Yokes of iron. And just click images. So the Lord said the punishment is going to be that he, our enemy, is going to put yokes of iron upon our necks. Who do you see in all those pictures as far as you scroll? Oh, our people.
Right.
In yokes of iron, which is what this image, similar to this image, correct? Okay, so why is it that Google understand who wore yokes of iron? But our people walking out here in East Point and all over the four corners of the earth can't put those two and two together. That God says the children of Israel will have yokes of iron upon their necks. But why don't we see everybody else in those pictures? Where's the Asians? Where are the Arabs? Why don't they have yokes of iron? Because the Bible is talking about us. We are the children of Israel that Moses was speaking to in the wilderness. And today, because we lost our heritage, we call ourselves Asiatic, we call ourselves black, we call ourselves African American, Jamaican, Haitian. That's all proof that because we had to serve our enemies, we lost our heritage. And that's only two curses real quick. We can do this all day. But I got this question right here. What's your question, sister?
Okay. So, in this rhetoric, why are we cursed?
Okay.
Why do we do so bad? And number two,
Yes.
why
Great
do
question,
we,
by the way.
why do we quote from the King James Version instead of quoting things like the Ethiopian Bible if we want to get connected to our fellow brothers and sisters in Africa when Christianity was created in Africa?
Okay. I'll deal with each one of those because you have like 3 in one, right? So the first one was, what did we do to receive these curses? Right? So bad, right? Okay. There's a few places I want to go. Bear with us. So first, remember what we read in verse 15. If you will not hearken and do all of the Lord's commandments, all these curses will come upon you and overtake you. Right? That's the first part.
Now the commandments, are you talking about like the 10 commandments?
Oh, see, I like the questions coming here. It says commandments, but there's far more than 10.
I know a 42, like the 42 laws of mine.
Oh, okay, that's something totally different.
But it stems, like the 10 commandments stems off of that. Because it
Okay.
predates it.
Okay, I want to share something with you. It's not based off of that. Here's what I'm going to share with you. Let's deal with one thing at a time, right? Okay, give me Amos chapter 3, verse 1. Amos, yeah, you can put that down. So I just want to make sure we understand how prophecy was fulfilled through our history. So God was talking to who? Does anybody else fit what we've read so far? Does the Asian man fit slavery on ships with yokes of iron? Does Arab man fit that, or woman?
Well, white people receive their punishment as well. Like, let
Oh,
me, yeah, well, they
sis, give me
receive.
some. Give me some. That's what I'm talking about. Just ask me some good questions right there. But let's deal with us first, right? Because, and I'm going to prove it with this verse right here. Read it.
Amos.
Oh, we're going to prove it. God is going to prove it.
Right. Amos chapter 3 and verse 1. Hear this word that the Lord has spoken against you, O children of Israel.
So from now on, when you pick up this book, you're always going to have in mind, over and over again, God is talking to the children of Israel. Now when you have a level of context of who is speaking, who is being spoken to, when you read it now, you're going to say, okay, that fits us now. Because there's now a connection being made with what's written. It's no longer he went to the store, she went upstairs, they came from the backyard. Right. Who's he? Who's she? Who's they? We now know the children of Israel is we, so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. The children of these slave trades. We are the children of Israel. So now we have a little context. So God says, I'm speaking to you, O children of Israel. Go ahead.
Against the whole family which I brought up from the land of Egypt.
Remember I mentioned the Exodus with Moses? He's referring to that. He said, the same people that I brought out of the Exodus, I'm talking to you today. Go ahead.
Saying, you only have I known of all the families of the earth.
God says, out of every nation he created, he only knows you.
Right.
He created all nations. Absolutely. 18 nations to be exact. So everyone on this earth descends from those 18 nations some way, somehow. Right? But God says he's only talking to a specific people. And how do we know which people those are? If what we read and what we'll continue to read, how we identify with the curses, because they only fit that one people. But read that verse again.
You only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore, I will punish you.
So the correlation, she said, what did we do so bad? I'm going to give you an example. Y'all have children? Okay, she's your child. You have children? Okay. Let me give you an example. When she was little and the other children were little, right? They would look down the street and say, hey, Mom, can I go play with those kids down the street? All children do that, right? Can I go outside? Yeah. You look outside, there's black, white, Asian, Arab, there's everybody out there because you live in a multicultural area, right? You say, okay, go outside, go play, but be home before what? Say that again, cuz. There you go. That's something that many of us can relate to. Be home before the street light comes on. So you gave a rule. You gave a commandment to your children. If your child, your daughter comes home at 3 in the morning as a little kid, what comes next? Sis said a punishment.
Bring it out.
So let's read it again from the top.
Verse 1. Hear this word that the Lord has spoken against you.
So God is giving instruction to his children. Go ahead.
O children of Israel, against the whole family which I brought up from the land of Egypt, saying, you only have I known.
Meaning only you're the only one that's my children or my child. Go ahead.
Of all the families of the earth. Therefore, I will punish you.
Just like mom just said. Go ahead.
For all your iniquities.
For all your sins. Okay. So question. Do you punish all the other kids that were outside with your children?
I'm responsible for my child.
Say that again.
I'm responsible for my child.
Meaning you're only going to punish your child, correct? God
my
just...
child came home at 3 in the morning, not the other children.
And how is that? Who did you give the instructions to about what time to be home?
I gave it to my child.
Really?
That's right.
Yeah.
God just said the exact same thing.
Right.
God says he only gave his commandments, his laws to his children.
Bring that out.
That's why we're the only ones that suffered these punishments.
Right.
So was the commandment given at like before birth or something? Like,
Okay.
You know how things are kind of like innate in you. You
Yes.
know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
at what point was the commandment given for someone to say, okay, God gave me this commandment. I ain't supposed to be,
Okay.
you know.
Okay. Isaiah 58 verse 1. I want to show you something. Because maybe prior to this, you weren't made aware of the laws, statutes, and commandments. But you said innately, like you kind of know when you shouldn't steal something. That's why folks, kids, when they take something, look around first. Because innately, you taught them that's not yours. So they have it in their minds from a small age. So there are commandments that we know, like you said, innately, it's within us, right? But the fact of being taught, as you're being taught now, let's see what God says. Isaiah 58 verse 1.
Isaiah chapter 58 verse 1. Bring it out. Cry aloud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people,
All people.
my people,
God says, show my people,
their transgression,
show them the commandments that they're breaking,
and the house of Jacob, their sins.
So sins is the breaking of God's laws or commandments, right? So God says, go to the people, teach them my laws, statutes, and commandments, and show them the sins that they're in so they can know what laws they're breaking or what commandments they're breaking. Meaning, you have to be taught these things. You understand? So though you're in adulthood, you may have not known before, but we're here today to teach these commandments.
What is the nation? Nation is men leading by example.